Hello and welcome to Series 2, Episode 5 of Holistic Emails, Email and More, a Q&A with. We're sorry for starting a little bit late. We're having a few technical problems. Hopefully, we'll have those all resolved by the time we get to the discussion. But I am Skip Federa, your moderator, and for those who are new to the show, on every episode, we showcase a different topic with a different panel of experts. And today we're talking about how email fits in your customer experience. Now, those who have been with us before, you know that this is really your show, right? We bring together the experts, but you drive the conversation with your questions. It's unscripted, it's unrehearsed, and we want you to ask what the questions that are most important in your mind. Today, obviously, about fitting email marketing into your customer experience. So please ask your questions using the QA button on the right-hand side of your screen, and feel free to use the chat for anything else and everything else. We'll be asking for some feedback at the end of the event. Please give us feedback. If you have any thoughts along the way, put those in the chat. We'll collate them and go over it at the end. Now, we also know that sometimes you don't want to ask your question in front of everybody, or your question is just a little too complicated to type out. But don't worry. Our speakers will be available at roundtable sessions after the panel. So be sure to pull up a chair, turn on your camera, plug in your mic, and join us as we keep the chat going in a bit more informal setting. Although, to be fair, even this setting isn't that formal. Now, we are incredibly grateful to all of our sponsors for helping us bring these conversations to such a wide audience. This series is brought to you by our gold sponsors, Iterable and Validity, and our silver sponsors are PE Origin and Expert. We thank them for everything they've done to help us get this series off the ground. Now, if you need to catch up on Series 1 or the first 4 episodes of Series 2, you can find them on our YouTube channel or on Holistic Email's site, and we'll put a link to them in the chat at some point here in the next couple of minutes. Now, we've got a great show lined up for you today. With me, as always, is best-selling author and this year's recipient of the EEC Email Marketer Thought Leader of the Year, Kath Pei of Holistic Email Marketing. That's a mouthful. We also have Victoria Van Buren of Gap, and not to be outdone, we have Karina Cohen, who was a finalist for this year's Stephen Pollard Thought Leader of the Year Award. So congratulations to her. And Karina with Caleres. And last but certainly not least, we have Elle Shuttleworth from our gold sponsor, Iterable. Now, our topic today is how to enhance the customer experience while you're... Oh, all right. Let's look at all the function in the script, shall we? Our topic today is how to enhance the customer experience, comma. Take a breath. And while you're getting your questions into the Q&A panel over there on the right, let's let each of our panelists quickly introduce themselves. And let's go with Karina. You're the first one I see. Why don't you start?
Great. Oh, excuse me. Thank you so much for having me. It's allergy season in Denver, Colorado. But yeah, I work for Caleres, and this is actually a parent company of 12 shoe brands and Famous Footwear. Some of the shoe brands that you might be familiar with are Sam Edelman or Naturalizer or Dr. Scholl's. We don't do the inserts, but we do all the shoes that go along with those inserts. But yeah, so we have lots of shoes, and my job is to actually take our marketing strategy and our technology and use it to make people happy feet first with custom personalized experiences across all of our different marketing channels.
Excellent. Now, we've got, I'm just going to roll the dice here. We're not entirely sure if Victoria is going to be with us, but Victoria?
No.
No. Okay, so we'll keep working. We'll keep working on Victoria's sound. Elle, why don't you go next?
Thanks, Skip. Hi, everyone. My name's Elle Shuttleworth. I'm the Senior Director of Customer Success at Iterable. For those of you that don't know Iterable, we are a data-driven cross-channel marketing platform and work with brands around the world to help unify their customer experiences and ensure that their people are getting the right message at the right time on the right channel.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And last, but certainly not least, my partner in crime, Kath Pei.
Hey, I'm Kath Pei, CEO of Holistic Email Marketing. We're a boutique email marketing consultancy. And we love doing strategic things and help clients to sort of address challenges that are maybe kind of out of their remit or a little bit too challenging, or they just need that, additional outside help. So we love to do all of that. We do all that audits and strategies and marketing automation programs, which we have to do. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell.
Cool. Thank you, Kath. I think we'll just crack on. I do have an update for everybody, though. Apparently, Kath and my good friend Ryan Phelan wanted to have a chat with Victoria during on a roundtable before the session, so we're blaming him for breaking her sound. Right. So, no questions in the question panel yet. Oh, are we ready? Are we ready? Come in, Victoria.
No.
No, if you're saying anything, we're not hearing it.
No.
No.
Gee.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll keep working on that behind the scenes. And I am going to crack on. So, first question. And folks, please get your questions in because my questions aren't going to be as good as yours. But first question I have, if I asked 10 marketers to define customer experience, I'd probably get 10 different answers. I mean, let's face it. There's so many facets to customer experience and so many people talking about it from so many areas of a business. It's probably too big to cover off with just 2 words, but maybe so that we're all kind of on the same page to get started. What does CX mean to each of you? Who wants to go first?
I can start.
Okay.
So I actually sit on what we call the customer experience team for Famous Footwear. And so the customer experience team covers our CRM, our SMS, our push, our email, basically all the different customer touch points that interact our company. We consider ourselves basically the front line to our customers. So if you were to go and make a purchase, we're the ones that make sure that the POS system has all of your rewards points in your rewards program so that you can get your special cash. Or if you're going to the site, we make sure that we can identify you and show custom tailored content based off of the shoes that we think that you're going to buy. And all of that sits within our experience. So we basically consider your experience to be any time that you're interacting with our company in any way.
Okay, excellent.
I personally think that nails it. And then to build upon that, that's what customer experience involves. But then the objective is to make it a good experience. So therefore to simplify, to streamline, to ensure there's no hurdles or, anything that, so whenever, an easy way of explaining it is that if a customer sort of, maybe you're asking for too much, or maybe you've put 3 steps, should only be 2, and your competitors have only got 2, and they're used to that. They sort of go, oh, why? It's kind of like customers don't want to be jumping over hurdles. They don't need to. They shouldn't have to. The technology is there nowadays. And we marketers are savvy enough to make sure that those hurdles aren't there. So that for me is very much the role of being, on a customer experience team or having a customer experience focus, even if you're not on an official team like Karina is. It's really cool.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Karina and Kath. The one thing I would add to that is, to me, it's about that holistic experience. So every interaction that a consumer has with your brand should come back with the same experience. Someone once said to me, and I use this quote often, but customers don't want to feel like they're speaking to an org chart. So you don't want to get an email one day from marketing and then an email the next day from customer support and then maybe a product update from engineering. It's really about ensuring that you have a holistic, seamless experience at every touch point with your brand.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's the name of our my consultancy.
Yeah.
Because I've been talking about this for over 10 years now, because that's really, it's absolutely crucial. And particularly nowadays that we understand as far as customers and loyalty and how many, bring the pandemic, through this thing, we've got a lot more customers who are online now. So they might have had their offline experience down pat, but now they've got to understand that they've got an online experience, which is different again, and they need to be making sure that that's, you know, suitable and giving them that lovely experience. So, yeah.
Well, in an ideal world, those two things would be tied together too, right? You know,
absolutely.
Off the back of what Elle said, you know, a customer they don't want to communicate with an org chart. They don't care about your silos, right? All they care about is, I'm dealing with this brand, and everybody I talk to should know what's going on. I don't know if they know how complicated that can be. Right. So, unfortunately, I think we might have lost Victoria permanently. I don't know. If she makes it back, great. We'll definitely loop her in, and we'll throw all the hard questions to her. But we have a question in from Julian Fernandez from Almost Media. And the question is, any recommendations for talking to prospects that you've captured after they've you know, filled in a form? So they filled in a form to be first to know of a new launch of a product in the next month. The product being launched is a new category for the business, hence the audience is a little new. In other words, you've got somebody, and maybe Karina, you can start out with this, because I can imagine it's the kind of thing that you might be dealing with quite regularly. You know, you've got a new product launch, a new line launch, a new season launch, and as related to that, you've got some customers that don't really know your brand very well. And obviously this is the first opportunity to give them any kind of customer experience. What do you do?
This is where your onboarding journey for your customer experience really comes into play. Your onboarding shouldn't just be, you know, giving somebody 20 off. It should be building the brand value, giving them the proposition, why it is that they should come to and shop at your brand versus going to your competitor. Because you're trying to make a repeat customer out of this one-time sign up, or if they haven't purchased yet, then even a first-time customer, because some products, you may not be the only one. So for example, for shoes, we're not the only ones that are going to have the newest Nike or the newest Adidas shoe. So we have to really show our brand value with things like a rewards program, where you can earn money back to get a discount on said shoes or your next pair of shoes. So that way they come back again and again. I was a customer at Famous Footwear long before I was an employee. So it's made it really valuable to having my experience, because I come in and streamline everything. Thanks so much. I know where the silos are. Oh, I think I can hear Victoria.
We've got Victoria. We've got Victoria.
Yay, finally. Sorry, I had to change all my settings. I'm so sorry and embarrassed. So thank you so much. It was working perfectly in the lounge, but something about it on here has clicked off.
Well, we all know what happened. You talked to Ryan, and it all went horribly wrong after that. So,
no, it was a great conversation. My apologies.
Karina, we'll get back to your answer in just a second, because I liked where you're heading. But Victoria, since we now have you, why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, apologies to interrupt. I'm Victoria, so I'm currently working with Gap Inc. So that's across Gap, Banana Republic, and Athleta, which if you're American, I'm sure you'll know, which is, yeah, a few nods. And working within Sierra Digital, but I've also previously worked at Kate Spade, House of Fraser, and a few other sort of names in the retail spectrum mainly.
Nice, excellent. Well, thank you for that, and welcome. So, Victoria, what we were just talking about, we had a question in basically, and you'll do this quite regularly as well, about you've been attracting some new customers around a new launch, whether it's a new line, a new brand, a new whatever. And Karina, back to you. You were talking about the onboarding process.
Yeah. So. Oh, I know where I was now. Sorry, I had to remember where my spot was. In addition to building your brand value, the other piece that we do within our onboarding journey is we collect more information about you via prompts for either an interactive form that you fill out in the email, or going back and even just populating more fields within your account page. And then we can use that to tailor other messages to you to make sure that we stay relevant while you're still new, instead of just giving you every single offer that we have available.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, so I think to your guys' point and the point of this, obviously, I think relevance is the kind of key aspect of the customer experience, but also that convenience aspect too. So I think those kind of two pillars are ones that we always try to cater to our customers for. And the most obvious within email for relevance is obviously personalization, which I know Karina was kind of talking to there. But that can take on a whole kind of huge realm. But the key aspect is the data, which also I think Karina was we're really touching on really well. So as many data touch points as you can get on your customer, and that you'll utilize while talking to them in a relevant, personalized way.
That's a really interesting point. Now, Elle, over to you, because obviously this is the personalization bit is in Iterable's wheelhouse. Talk us through that. What are some of the challenges that marketers are going to face doing that?
Oh gosh, where to start, Skip? I mean, when you talk about personalization, probably the biggest challenge for marketers is your personalization is only as good as data that you have on a user. And then when you start to talk about data, the biggest challenge there is that very oftentimes for marketers, the data is siloed. And so the sort of number one thing that you can do is well, there's a lot of things you can do. I would start by plotting that customer journey, identifying different interactions that your consumers will have with your brand. And off the back of those interactions, what data are you capturing on those users at each of those different stages? Once you know what they're capturing and what that will inform, then the biggest thing you can do is make sure that data is in one single place, so that you can then leverage that data for the different personalization campaigns or triggers that you might want to send. It goes back to having that holistic view of the customer, and you just can't do that if your data is spread out all over the place and not talking to each other. So yeah, I'd say you're only as good as your data when it comes to personalization. And then on the data front, make sure it's all in the place.
So, I mean, I'd like to pick up a point on what Elle just said then, because she said, plot out the customer journey, right? So that's the customer journey mapping, which I know for a fact is not done very often because people don't really know how to do it, right? So it can be a bit of a challenge. But what we like to do, we do workshops on this, and what we like to do is walk through the marketers, and we take them through, we're talking about the website because we do this in practice, but at the essence of it, it's the email. Because as Skip referred to, often email is where the customer experience can start, or it's definitely the beginning of a journey, right? If not multiple journeys. And so when you're going through the website and you're giving yourself different scenarios, they could turn up here if they were doing this, or they could turn here if they were doing this, every single time. So it's a case of you understanding what you want to be achieving with that page, which generally you understand that because it's there for a purpose. But then understand from their perspective what it is that they would like. And then you just ask yourself something really, really simple. How can we help them? How can we help them to achieve their objective? And that's when you then start to come up, well, we could be doing this program, or we could send an automated this, or we could be, removing this, hurdle or something like that. So what you're now doing is actually enhancing the customer experience because you're taking it from their perspective. So I really love that you brought that point up, Elle, because I think it's really, really relevant.
Kath, it's funny. I saw a thing the other day, and if I can dig it out again, I'll tweet it. It was about McDonald's and milkshakes, and what job was a milkshake performing? And when I saw that, I was like, what? But basically, McDonald's wanted to sell more milkshakes, and what they needed to figure out, what did the milkshake do for customers, and why were customers buying milkshakes? Because oddly, in the U.S., something like 40% of milkshakes are sold before 10 in the morning or something. I mean, the stats in the video, I might have them. I probably do.
That's because they eat your dry donuts.
Exactly.
It happens.
But yeah, so it's a point.
I thought that, kind of piggybacking off of what Kath was talking about, that my team, we actually just went through a very similar exercise with our rewards program. And so one of the things that we've done is as we build out a value piece within one email, the next email is looking at whether or not you have a data point to be able to actually use that benefit that we just educated you about. And if you have that data point already, then we skip that one and we go on to educating you further about the program. And if you don't, we take the time to make sure we collect it while you're still fresh on why it is valuable, such as like our birthday. So if you're a star, which is just our regular kind of base level, you get $5 extra reward cash for your birthday. Otherwise, you get $10. So then 2 days later, we send you an email and say, hey, we don't have your birthday yet. You want free money? And that's one of the ways we weren't doing before. And so that's one of the ways that we've iterated through our welcome journey and onboarding program to make sure that it is actually more holistic, as you were saying, because we can actually put in all of those data points across any of our, you can put it in your app, you can put it on the website, or you can now plug it into the email form, and then it'll sync back into one of the other systems.
Yeah. So I want to ask two questions, one of Skip and one of Corinna, right? So Skip, hold it there, because I want to hear how the milkshake story ended. And two, with Corinna, I want to know when, with your customer experience team, how long has it been in existence? When did it start? So maybe we could do you, and then Skip, you can fill us in on the milkshakes, because we're going to find out.
Well, I mean, we've had that same team for many, many years ago. So we just rebranded it a few years ago to actually be customer experience, because it was our e-commerce team, it was our CRM team, and it was our digital communications team. And so basically the only person that wasn't on that team affecting customer experience was our customer care. And so we strategically called now customer care instead of customer service, and then we take care of the experience.
Right.
So it was kind of when we rebranded from Brown Shoe to Caleres, we also rebranded a lot of our teams as well.
And Corinna, does that include UX as well? Like, is it
Yes.
kind of UX within that team? Got it.
Yeah.
Even our analytics team, they're all within customer experience as well now. So what most people would call like a digital marketing team is instead we call it our customer experience, because that's really what it is, to make people feel a little famous.
But no, seriously, I love the naming of things. I think it's really, really important. I think it's more important than a lot of us take it to be, right? So the naming of email programs, as you said, the customer experience team. Okay, straight away, what are you doing here? What's our purpose? Oh, it's in the name. It's really, really obvious. It's not just a digital marketing team or something. And same as like for me, the welcome email shouldn't be the welcome email. It's the first purchase program more often if you're an e-commerce company, right? If you're a business and a B2B, then it could be a onboarding program, because that's what you're doing. So the more specific and relevant you can make the names, I think the better, because that then, I love all of this, right? Everything that we're talking about, even though it doesn't directly to do with customer experience, it is. The naming of your programs, of your marketing automation programs, actually helps in a negative way or in a positive way your customer experience, because that's what you're going to be focusing on. And it's either going to help or it's going to hinder your customer. So, yeah.
And I think it's what we've been talking about, right? It's like not just we're all email marketers and we obviously love an email, but we can personalize the email to death, and then people land on the website, and then unfortunately it's personalized and they have a rubbish experience, and then they don't come back. And so it's this whole thing of like actually making sure that we're talking to all those touch points, whatever they might be, like whether it's an ad they see on social media or an email or like a personalized website experience. So I think thinking about all of those and how they join up.
Yeah, no, seriously, what you just said, Tor, was so true, because we do lots of audits, and so we'll go through the customer experience. We audit the customer experience, and so many times you'll see that the email team have lovingly optimized and created this fantastic email and tested it, and they just know this is what works. And then you take them to the landing page, and there's a disconnect, because landing page is completely different. It's got a different tone of voice. Everything is so different. And so there is this huge disconnect. And I'm sure we've all been there. You end up going and landing on something. You go, what am I doing here again? Why am I here? That's one of the first things that the email team can actually do to try and make sure that the experience is good throughout the journey. And sometimes it's just a matter of putting in the same phrase or the same colors or something like that, just so that you can give a little bit of a visual indicator.
Something like use the same font.
Yeah.
Go crazy. Actually, I heard a great piece of advice on that, Kath. is get your mom or your grandmother or somebody who, you know, a friend, anybody who doesn't do it every day, all day.
Yeah.
You know, give them a coupon, let them buy a free pair of shoes or free, you know, shirt or whatever it is that you sell, and just have them give you feedback, and you'll learn loads, and it'll cost you, you know, the cost of a shirt. Now, Elle.
Yeah, I'm never sad when I have to go and buy a pair of shoes to test something.
Yes, sign me up to your test
store experience curbside. I guess I'll buy another pair of shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. The funny thing is, so I think everybody here probably knows Scott Cohen, and his company sells mattresses. So like, how many mattresses can you buy, right? Shoes, anybody, you can always buy shoes.
Yep.
So Elle, questions come through that's specific to Iterable. You don't have to answer it that way if you don't want to, but and from everybody else, you know, we talked a lot at the beginning of that answer about journey mapping. What journey mapping tools specifically plug into Iterable, if any, or does Iterable have some of its own? And then for the rest of the panelists, when you sit down to map a journey, how do you do it? What tools do you use?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, I actually started out my career as a marketer, and so this customer journey mapping process is something that I did as a marketer. And then when I moved into sort of technology and marketing automation, I talk about it all the time. I think, Kath, you and I have actually had many discussions on this. I think the really important thing when you talk about customer journey mapping, a lot of people that haven't done it before think it's this huge involved process, and it's going to take a lot of time, and they need the best tools to be able to map it. And actually, you can start out with something as simple as an Excel sheet or literally just drawing on a whiteboard. The number one thing is just to get something down on paper, get some sort of diagram that looks at the 3 different stages of your customer lifecycle. So you'll go from acquisition through to nurture, through to retention and loyalty, and then it kind of becomes this cyclical thing. So you don't have to have a fancy program. Start with Excel sheets. That's how I do most of my journey mapping. If you want to get fancy, some tools that I've used in the past that have worked really well are Lucidchart, InDesign as well is another great tool. I have to say none of those integrate directly into Iterable, because most of the time what you'll do is you'll use a tool like that to plan out your customer journey. Yeah. And then you'll move it into a tool like Iterable where you would use our workflow canvas to say, okay, we're taking this kind of section of our customer journey and we're going to build out what that looks like from a workflow perspective. So maybe that's your welcome series or your onboarding. I know we've talked a lot about names today. So you would sort of take what you've brainstormed and then move it into Iterable using the workflow canvas.
That'd be cool though if you could just push a button. Sorry, Courtney, go ahead.
I was just saying, Team Still, we love to start our journeys just by getting together and even just drawing it out on a whiteboard, because that's one of the easiest ways for everyone to kind of describe how they envision it. And then, we use Lucidcharts. And one of the pieces that we find has been really important and really successful within our building of customer experiences is we then take it out to other parts of the company and ask them how they envision the customer's experience to make sure we actually have everything covered. So not just from the marketing side, because marketing can be very siloed, and we know what we want it to look like, but not always how it actually happens. So we'll go out to our wholesale sales team, and because a lot of times they're out in the actual stores and with some of our brands. So they even know like how our brands expect our customers to have an experience, which is really helpful. And then we go down to customer care and we listen to what complaints are, and then we go out to even our store associates. But we make sure that we try and cover as much of the company as we can. And sometimes I even take it to some of our younger staff within the company, just to make sure that it also resonates, because a lot of times, like as we get older, we might, something's really cool, but now that I have a 16 and a 17-year-old, I'm finding more and more that I'm not that cool.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, so Tor and Corinna, do you guys have personas that you use? Because you can then go to an extra deeper level, can't you? And actually then create a different one for the different personas, because they do act, as you were saying, and often personas can be based on, demographics, but also, motivations, but also age as well. So, do you guys use this?
Yeah, we do. We have personas that we've actually kind of like refreshed in the last kind of couple of years, actually, across all of our brands. I mean, it's really interesting for me because I'm obviously working in Europe, and the personas have been developed in North America. So it's very interesting to, again, like try and find some similarities but differences within our market. And it is like a very different European customer shops Gap to who shops in North America. So it's constantly that evolving piece and like figuring out who your customer is, who you're trying to target, and not just who you want it to be, because I think that's another mistake that we all make. We kind of just think, oh, it's obviously that person. And then you do work into the customer and you think, oh my God, I've got so much more wealth of knowledge here. And it's a completely different customer to what I thought it was.
Well, and Victoria, I assume that your personas also changed by country too, right?
Completely. And I work also on the franchise side of the business. So I'm working all across the world. So internationally, with Asia, here in Europe, also, Dubai, North America a little bit, South America too. So yeah, completely differs across all our different regions.
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to have a client that shall remain nameless, but a lot of the marketing assets were created centrally at headquarters, and all of the model shots were created centrally at headquarters. And when they were sent, I did a lot of work with the South American region, and they decided that the South Americans that they chose for the models didn't look South American enough, and they just picked people from the Middle East. Actually, at the end of the day,
It's interesting. We work a lot with influencers, like for this reason, because then we can work with that local market and make sure they're catering to that local customer a lot more, rather than just repurposing our brand assets.
So questions come in. That ties into the question. So the question is from Annika. Oh, so first off, thanks, Jessica, for that last question. This next question is from Annika, who asks, how often do you feel that the customer journey map should be redone, refreshed? But kind of that ties into a question I'd written down here. Do you ever go back? So you've built the journey you thought you were going to have. Do you ever go back and look at the actual user data to see what the journey has become?
Absolutely.
So say we actually go through and refresh all of our content either every 6 months, annually, depending on which brand. But we go through and do data audits and reiterate as often as we possibly can. So I even went into some of our journeys yesterday because I had found a little bit better way of identifying some customers and pieces of data to be able to more accurately target them for some messaging. And so I went in and tweaked that across the whole company so that everyone could reap the benefits instead of waiting until the later in the year when we actually launch whatever the new rebranded. We call it rebranding. So we actually brand our journeys at least once a year, which gets really confusing when we actually do like a corporate rebranding of a brand, because then we're like, are we branding this or are we rebranding this? So, but yeah, we try and make sure that all of our content stays as fresh as possible, and then we go in and make sure that we're gathering as much data. And then as we see newer technologies, we try and bring that in as well. So when we started being able to collect birthdays in our credit card little display, in addition to the website, we started really to push birthdays and starting to really build out value behind that. And now we're doing the same with our credit card. So we're launching a private label credit card, and we're doing the same and figuring out ways that now that we can touch the customer across all of the different touch points instead of just digitally, how we can really start building that into the program. And so we'll go through and even rebuild it now and build in these new features that we have, or a product, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I think it's so important to continuously iterate and test on your customer journey and the experience creating. I mean, of course, you need to be the ones at the beginning to sit down and figure out kind of the framework that you'll be building within. But once you have that framework, I mean, we're called iterable for a reason, right? But you want to make sure you're continuously iterating. And to give you a story, I actually worked with a customer on this very recently. We work with Calm. For those of you who don't know what Calm is, they're the number one sleep meditation and relaxation app. And they have done extremely well as a business, but their head of marketing understands that they need to look at the data and make sure they have a holistic experience. And so instead of just launching a new campaign and seeing how it went, they actually went back to their onboarding flow and they looked at the data that they were collecting analytics platform. And what they realized is that about 80% of their users were actually dropping off in the first 30 minutes after using the app. And so that's where they decided to focus on enhancing the customer experience. And they actually realized the first hour was the most important when it came to engagement, which you wouldn't necessarily think about unless you looked at the data. So they completely changed their onboarding and their welcome flow. They went down from a 27-day engagement cycle to a 15. And through testing and iterating, they actually saw a 4 times increase in their revenue in that first 30 days. So it's really important that you create the framework, but then that you constantly test it, ask for feedback from your users, build a hypothesis, test it, and really make sure you're looking at the data.
Yeah, absolutely. We do this a lot too with our clients. So we'll go through and have a look. We'll do an audit of a particular program. So, for example, we've done for it's a brand in the UK, and they sell subscription pet food. So that onboarding, and it's a free trial, and then they need to do the conversion, right? And so it's very much, it's an education process. It's then going through and analyzing, why people have actually dropped out, why they cancelled after the trial and everything. So it really is looking at everything, looking at all the data, looking at all the drop-off points, checking your website, absolutely. Iterating is so important. And I think that's one of the things that is email marketers, I think it's a bit of an issue historically, because it's always so hard just to get that program out the door, isn't it? And we feel such a huge, big sense of achievement. Yes, we've done it. And we sort of think, wow, we can sit pretty now for, a few years. You can't sit pretty. You don't know if it's going to be working. So you need to be monitoring it. You need to be making sure, ideally put in a second stream so you're continually optimizing and testing it. And just, fiddle it around with it and check that you are you're not leaving money on the table, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think within retail as well, it's that constant development piece, like with your trigger programs, etc. Like, what are you doing next? Are you doing a back in stock to make sure that you can enhance your customer's experience? Are you obviously abandoned cart, random browse? Like, what is your next, date in the diary in terms of rolling out these trigger programs, and how are they going to not only build your business but also help your customers?
Yeah.
Those are all really good points, and interestingly. So to follow on with that, Jessica has another question, and also Jessica, I would suggest that we'll be seeing you again in 2 weeks, because your question here is, how do you approach A/B testing, which is our topic in 2 weeks. But how do you approach A/B testing with different sets of copy and building out custom audience sets while you're keeping your customer experience going? Victoria, you kind of touched on that. A little bit as to, what's the next thing we're going to roll out. But okay, you've rolled it out. I've been doing this for a long time, working, with Kath and alongside Kath. And I think the one that we have always agreed on is the number of marketers that have, fire and forget. And then you get something like a pandemic, and all of a sudden you get all these auto campaigns that are going out, and it kills your brand because you look really insensitive. Yeah. So how do you keep up and how do you optimize it?
Yeah, and I think, look, there's a lot of different ways now with A/B testing. Like, there's a lot of different partners that you can rely on, whether that's like Phrasee and people like that for subject lines, and people that can support your business case rather than, you constantly having to, as Kath mentioned, very lean resources, trying to keep your hands in kind of like many pies can be quite daunting. So I think leaning on some of these incredible partners that we have to be with from an email marketing perspective is key. But yeah, constantly testing, constantly optimizing as much as we can, and getting those learnings in, and also figuring out like what's your goal, right? Like, what's your kind of your KPI that you want to get out of it, whether it is like engagement. So if you want to increase your click to open rate, if it's to reduce unsubscribes, if it's conversion, like what exactly is your goal, and to then kind of go from there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and one thing I'd add to that as well is you don't have to A/B test on everyone. So you mentioned, Skip, like you want to make sure that you protect the customer experience whilst also optimizing and iterating. One of the strategies that we've seen work really well is just take 10% or 20% of your customers that are going through a particular flow, let's say your welcome or your onboarding, and test some new content on them. So you're keeping the majority going through experience that you know works well, but you have a subset that you're testing on to see if they outperform, and then slowly incorporate the winning sort of outcomes into your overarching strategy, so that you're sort of constantly adding to it, but you're testing with a smaller set of your base.
Yeah, we don't take random percentages, but we have our personas, but then within personas, we even have sub-personas. So within our women's group, since we sell men's, women, and children's clothing, we have like our high value, our just regular shoppers that maybe come in a couple of times a year, and then our people that maybe come in once a year, and then our unengaged. So we'll go through and even assess which group we think would have the most benefit out of whatever it is that we're testing. So if it's like our new credit card program, we're going to start with our most high value customers, and they're going to be the first ones that start seeing all of our private label credit card information and being prompted, because they're also probably the ones most likely to have the credit card approved. So instead of going to our least engaged and being like, hey, we have a credit card, and they'll be like, and then people going, my content didn't resonate. So you have to be really thoughtful as well and strategize not only what it is that you're testing, but who you're testing to and who's going to get the most benefit out of it. Otherwise, you can set yourself up for failure, even with brilliant content.
So Kath mentioned this really quickly earlier, but to pick off those two kind of thoughts, and this is really a Karina and Victoria question. Do either of you use holdout groups? So do you test against,
control groups? Group? Yeah.
We actually use control groups even in our regular marketing. So we have a universal control group, which are some of our people that even get mailing lists. And so we see within our mailer how effective that is compared to some of our emailers.
That's interesting. And is that something you both inherited, or did you have to fight for that?
I inherited it.
I did too. I have a really great CRM team, and they already had that built out.
Yeah, but I have had to like incorporate it at previous years to make sure, when I'm testing and stuff like that, it was kind of and not a kind of organic thing.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the CFO is like, "Wait, you're gonna do what?" But then 2 weeks later, they're like, "How did you can't prove to me that your marketing is working?" Yes, but you can't have it both ways, can you? Anyway, sorry, I just totally lost my train of thought. So, we've talked a lot about, the different components of customer experience. But for where, so I tweeted the other day that my view is customer experience starts before you've even had the first interaction. What are your thoughts on that? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. You go, Eloise. I'll go after you.
No, go for it, Tor. I'm nodding in agreement with what you say.
No, I think so, because it's not only, it's like, obviously we're about brand awareness. So if you're looking potentially around, a known brand, so say for instance, Gap, everyone has an opinion already, whether it's, and that's informed social media, through through public opinion, through friends, through campaigns that you may have seen even 10 years ago. There's a lot of kind of built up impressions that we have about certain things, and that's owned. So the brand can do a certain amount to try to either boost that or change your mind entirely. But ultimately, we all have an opinion before we enter into a journey.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
I can't hear the Gap. I was just going to say I can't hear the Gap brand without singing the jingle from the '80s in my head.
There you go.
And anybody who's old enough has now just started singing it in their head. So you're welcome. Sorry, I cut you.
No, not at all. That was that. I need to go and look at the jingle. But I couldn't agree with you more. I think now more so than ever before, people want to engage with brands that they trust. So, Dora, I'm also based out of London, and one of the things that we really notice coming into EMEA is that sort of brand trust and loyalty is huge over here, probably more so than in the US. And so setting yourselves up as a trusted authority in your space, having advocates will speak for your brand and refer you to others and say, hey, yeah, I've purchased from them before, or I work with them and they're awesome, you should do the same. That is such a big part now of acquisition that it's definitely something that should never, ever be forgotten. Yeah, I couldn't agree more that it definitely begins before that first interaction that a particular person might have with your brand.
Mm. And then I think it also
with the web now that if you haven't done the work ahead of time, when they go type in whatever shoe or shirt or whatever it is that they're looking for, they're going to get hundreds of replies back or results back from Google or whatever other search engine that they use. So you have to have all of that trust already built up so they know that you're a reputable company.
So one of the things I've actually taught on this, I've used Gap as an example. So when you come to the website, what are the stats about the conversions? That they very rarely actually convert for the first time that they're visited, right?
Yeah.
But the soft and easy conversion is to get email permission, and that's of course where we come in, right? And Gap, I don't know, I haven't checked recently, but Gap historically has always had the subscribe at the top, making it easy for the customer. And this, I think, that's the beginning, because of the customer journey with email marketing is actually just getting permission and making it easy for them to give you permission, because there's so many, particularly with fashion, it's a trend with e-commerce sites, they're all put down the bottom. And I just want to say this to you, right? We've done a bit of research and we found out that with e-commerce companies, 70%, or I think it was closer to 60% of websites, actually e-commerce websites, have the permission form below, like at the footer. Other ones are a little bit above the footer, but minimal. I'm talking about less than 10%, let's call it above the fold area. And just think about this. This is, if you want to give a good customer experience, this is the kind of thing that you need to be thinking about. The problem is, though, is often that you as the email marketing team do not have ownership over where their form goes. And that's where you guys need to be working. And I love the customer experience team, because that means that you're now all on board to give that great customer experience. It'll be easy for you to pitch it and say, well, listen, we need to have this placed above because that's going to help the customer experience. Rather than, because most website development teams or most website teams, they're kind of like, yeah, well, the email subscribe's got nothing to do with us. It's not actually going to bring in dollars. That we prefer them to actually buy a product than subscribe. So we're going to deprioritize it. So
we actually have ours on the bottom, but we've done some research and we have the app at the top because we've actually found that our app users are more high value than even our email users. So that's how we strategize our hierarchy, is that the app actually brings in more conversion, and you can purchase right there in the app and use your rewards points. So that's why we have our download for the app. But then one of the first things you do is you go to your account page and you get prompted to sign up for communications.
Yeah.
But that is why for our commerce sites that we have the email sign up at the footer. It's because we're actually hoping that you will download the app, and to use the app, you have to be part of the rewards program. So then we're actually, and our rewards program members are even higher converters than a regular person.
So it's still a bigger ask, though, isn't it? And I'm assuming you've gone, because I know your team's very, very advanced. You've gone through, but these are the kind of things that you need to be working out. You say, okay, so that means that the app users are actually higher than the email. But then we understand that signing up for email, giving a simple address and maybe a name or something, you can put them on the journey to get them to download the app, and so on and so on. And are we better off just getting our foot in the door by getting the email permission and then converting them to the app and then converting them to buying, So, but these are the kind of things that when you're thinking about that journey, the customer journey and the mapping and everything, that's really what you need to do, and go straight to the data and have a look. You've been doing this for a while, I would imagine, so I keep getting the microphone.
Well, I think persona must be so important there too, is right? Because different personas are going to want to go different directions. Some personas are going to be more app-led, others will, be more, and of course, when somebody comes to the site, you don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
Well, I say you don't know anything about them. You know what search term they use to get in. Potentially from the search term, you might be able to assign them to a persona or not, depending on how clear you make that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are coming up on 25 past the hour. These sessions go so quick all the time, way too quick for my liking. But if you want to keep the conversation going, we're going to give you an opportunity to do that in just a second. So first, I want to say thank you again to our sponsors. We couldn't do it without them. So our gold sponsors, again, Iterable, thank you very much, and Validity. And then our silver sponsors, REP Origin and Email Expert. If you've got any feedback for today's session, please throw us something in the comments right now before we go to the roundtables. Let us know what we could do to make these better, what you like, what maybe you don't like. Obviously, take that all on board and do what we can, because as I said at the beginning, these sessions are for you. Now, of course, a big, tremendous thank you to all of our panelists. Victoria, thanks for being so patient and working through all the tech issues that you had.
I'm sorry, guys.
You have no reason to be sorry. If we've learned nothing from this pandemic, we've learned that video calls won't work when you need them to, pretty much all the time. So thank you very much. Karina, thank you. Elle and Kath, thank you all for providing such valuable insights and having such a great chat. And most of all, I want to thank all of you for spending your time with us today. So as I mentioned earlier, Kath and I will be back in 2 weeks with Emma DeAngelis and Jen Capstraw. We're going to be talking about A/B testing. So start thinking about those A/B testing questions. Now, for those of you who joined us live today, we've got, as I said, set up some roundtables, which you may have noticed when you first came in to the session. This is your opportunity to continue the conversation with our panelists and meet other marketers who are going through the exact same challenges that you are. So go find a table, turn on your sound and video, and be part of the conversation. Now, I can imagine that many of you are sitting there thinking, not really dressed for this. Don't worry if you're wearing that oh so comfy but slightly tattered lockdown hoodie. It's okay. We won't judge, and the conversations aren't recorded. So Chatham House rules apply. It's going to be a wonderfully safe space to share and learn and grow. So I hope to see you on a roundtable. But if you can't join us, we'll see you in 2 weeks for our session on A/B testing. Until then, be safe and make good choices.